So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to call to order the City of Burlington's Board of Finance meeting on Tuesday, October 21st at 5:04 p.m. Our first item is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Moved by Councilor Barlow. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Carpenter. Thank you. Any discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to our second item, which is our public forum. It is the practice of the Board of Finance to first go to members of the public in the room, and then we go online. Is anyone here from the public who would like to address the Board of Finance? Seeing no one in the room, we'll go online. And we have former Councilor Sharon Busher with us tonight. Good evening, Sharon. You can go ahead.
Good evening. It's very strange. I have two screens, but you are not in the picture, Mayor. I see Councilor Carpenter and the hands of, I believe, Councilor Barlow. So anyways, just very strange orientation, but okay. That was just an FYI. I have three quick items. The first one has to do with CCTV and the FY27 budget request. I read through it. I didn't really see the total amount requested, and I didn't see what we paid last year. Normally there is that information. So first of all, thank you to CCTV. Without you, I would be clueless. So thank you for what you do. And thank the city for supporting all of these meetings and the hybrid option. But I was really looking for those dollar amounts. So that's one question. The next has to do with the ground lease on the Beta hangar. And the presentation has an area map 5. I just couldn't orient myself. So I had some really quick questions. I support this, but is Area 5 been zoned for this use? Are there any natural areas, wetlands close by, any runoff issues? Normally that is addressed briefly, not in depth at this level. And I wondered is this controversial, and does South Burlington and maybe Williston, I'm not sure if they really, I know South Burlington would care. What do they have to say about this? So those are my questions that I couldn't get the answers to myself. And the last has to do with the BED new fee schedule. And I just wanted to highlight a few things. You know, everything is increasing. And some of these fees I hope I'll never experience, but there were two that stood out. The disconnect reconnect charge that was $0 that now goes to $577. It assumes it's driven by some type of service at home, but what about if the line is down due to weather, like the wind knocked it down? In the communication, it also states that no BED engineering work is required. So I do wonder why it went from $0 to $577. That's for a single meter. I didn't address a multimeter. And then the reconnect, the power problem investigation, once again, those are big increases, but I do believe that is, you pay those if indeed the problem with the power being out is your responsibility. You created it, not some external event. But I wanted to make sure that is accurate, because it went from during the day, regular hours, $28 to $156, and after hours, $195 to $562. But I just really wanted to highlight those two things and just make sure that I understand why someone would be the recipient of these significant increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Is anyone else online to address Board of Finance? Nope. Seeing none. Okay, so seeing none, we will close the public forum and move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion on our consent agenda?
What? Yeah. I would move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions.
Thank you, Counselor Barlow. Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor Carpenter. Thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to our deliberative agenda, item 4.1 is a memorandum of understanding between the Friends of the Fletcher Free Library and the Fletcher Free Library itself, City of Burlington. Friends, Barry Dinko, our director, Jonathan, thank you for being with the Friends, we appreciate it. I'll let you give us a high overview and then we can see for discussion questions.
Okay.
So we are. Okay.
Okay. My name, those who don't know me, my name is Jonathan Sokol. I'm the president of the Friends of the Fletcher Free Library. Most of what I'm going to say, you probably already read in Mary's memorandum. It's quite comprehensive. Friends of the Fletcher Free Library is a 501c3 volunteer organization dedicated to supporting the mission and the work of the library. Our mission is to encourage community support for the Fletcher Free Library, raise money for its needs, promote cultural literacy programs, and sponsor educational and enrichment programs for all ages. The Friends acts as the fiscal agent for funds received for the use of the library, whether from donations, grants, bequests, or fundraising activities. This MOU defines the cooperative relationship between the city and the Friends of the Fletcher Free Library as the Friends raises capital for a substantial renovation of a cornerstone city building. As one of the recitals states, the city, the library, and the Friends agree that the library building requires substantial renovations to make it a 21st century institution. It is an addendum to an MOU between the city and the Friends that has been in place since 2018. This MOU is drafted, reviewed, and revised in collaboration with Attorney Sturdivant from the City Attorney's Office, CAO Schad, and the Mayor's Office. It's passed PAC in a slightly different form, but the difference is the final version strengthens the position of the city. It doesn't weaken the position of the city. Besides the obvious reason, we're eager to execute a signed MOU because we have donors ready to contribute a significant amount of money to the project as soon as they are assured the campaign has the documented support of the city. Some of the highlights in the MOU, Section 3B says the city, through the Office of the Mayor and the City Council, retains final approval for this library renovation project. So all approval rests with the city. The Friends will apply for and solicit public and private funds. The city will support the Friends where appropriate, submitting applications for public funding and cooperating with the Friends where appropriate in raising private funds. The MOU establishes a building committee to facilitate smooth cooperation and coordination of effort in conducting the campaign and the library renovation project. And members of the building committee would include representatives appointed by the city, Friends, the architect, and the general contractor. City will go up for bids when funds raised or pledged through the capital campaign reach 85% of its goal. And its goal, as stated in the MOU, is $32 million. It does not commit the city to finance the project, nor does the project rely on city capital investment. But just to be clear, at the request of the mayor, we did create a straw person timeline, which included funds listed in the city's long-range capital plan to finance deferred maintenance. This is BTE Thrives, just straight out of BTE Thrives, which designates a hypothetical $6 million to the library. But there is nothing in the MOU obligating the city to finance this project in part or in. So in a nutshell, the Friends raise the money, the city spends the money. I can answer any questions you might have. Or Mary.
Anything to add?
No, I think Jonathan did a great job summing up.
Before we open up for conversation, with the board, I just want to appreciate the Friends, of course. We had a couple back and forth just to really finalize this MOU and to be able to get clarity, as Jonathan outlined, around the city's roles. Also clarity around this is our beautiful public library, and how does the city plan around doing in good faith both our support, our facilitation, but potential our own capital dollars in the future when we are able to afford as such, plan as such around that with our investment in our own building. But I really appreciated always the spirit of great care for this library from the Friends, and always and really good partnership with what the city is able to offer, and most importantly, the understanding of our fiscal constraints, but also our deep intention to obviously do right by our library as well. So thank you for those conversations. So let's open it up for any questions or comments from the board.
Go get that money. Use all the positive energy. Thank you.
Councilor Bartlett?
And I also want to express my appreciation. Support. I had a question, I guess, about, like, some of the friends have already put some money. And that's money they had raised outside of this, explicit capital campaign, or? Is that, or is it part of the capital?
Well, most recently, it's because of the cost of this exterior restoration that exceeded what the plan was. And the plan was not a new plan, so it's not surprising that it might be more expensive than it was first anticipated. So money that was nominally raised for the interior renovation is going to go for the exterior, some of it. The number in the MOU is 32 million, but that the $3 million or so in the exterior work is a part of this too. So it's really a $35 million project. So it's all the same. It's all one big bucket. It's just whether it's spent before, earlier or later.
So this really just codifies practice that's already sort of underway in some.
In a sense, yes, because we already have committed putting money in.
Right, no.
Any other questions or comments by the board? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion? Someone would like to make? Councilor Carpenter?
I would move to approve and recommend the city council authorize the director of the Fletcher Free Library to execute the capital campaign memorandum of understanding with the Friends of the Fletcher Free Library, subject to review and approval of the city attorney.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Barlow. Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Our next item is 4.2, a request to execute a ground lease agreement with Beta Technologies, our airport. You're welcome.
Right. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. So I'm here with Beta Technologies Lease. I think you have heard of Beta Technologies. I kind of want to break this down into 3 sections for you. Just a little bit of history of this particular parcel and how we advertise our land, the history of Beta Technologies at the airport, and then Marie will jump right into the terms of the lease agreement itself. So as an airport, under some federal rules, we have to advertise certain parcels around the airport specific to aviation or aeronautical use, meaning essentially it needs to be connected to our taxiway and runway systems. We advertised a few years ago a map which is now attached to the Board of Finance and the City Council meetings. That map hopefully will help guide exactly where this is located, all identified as Area 5, identifies 5 locations on the airport that are all available for aeronautical use, hangars and other apron type spaces to connect to our taxiways. We received no bids on any of those 5 locations until about 6 or so months ago when Beta Technologies requested additional information associated with area number 5. We are under negotiations with area number 4 as well, with a different entity that will come to you at a later time. Area number 5 is a completely vacant plot of land. It is zoned what South Burlington refers to as air, or literally that's the name of the zone that allows for this type of use. which is proposed to be a hangar to store aircraft. Again, the lot is currently vacant, zoned appropriately for this type of use. And when we published this map, we also identified a fair market evaluation on how we rent out aeronautical spaces at the airport, more specifically, what cost or what price we lease those spaces out. At the time, that was identified at just under 50 cents a square foot. That's an annual basis for unimproved plots of land at the airport. Today's value is 50 cents a square foot annually, and that's what was identified on that map and on the one-page document that associates or complements that map, which is still located on btv.aero. Beta has been with the airport for a few years now, 5-6 years now, since 2019. They have a couple of locations around the airport. Like I said, this particular location that they want to use for a hangar, again, appropriately zoned. It has been seen by South Burlington Development Review Board, so they've looked at not just the zoning requirements, but also the building requirements, and it does not impact any natural areas or wetlands associated with the space. What's very nice about this space, it is surrounding, or at least a portion of it, an existing apron or aircraft parking location, exterior location. This new hangar proposal will be attached to that apron. However, the apron will always remain a public use facility, meaning, and I want to clarify, an aviation public use facility. You have to have a reason to be on the airport, of course. That apron does not and is not part of this lease agreement, except for the fact that ingress and egress to the actual hangar will be always available to any of the tenants that propose hangars, in this case, Beta Technologies. So Beta came to us a few months ago. We've been negotiating a new lease, and the terms of the new lease are from Murray.
This is a 30-year lease. It will start when it gets signed. Have all the approvals and everything is in place, then it will be effective when it gets signed. Nick had mentioned it's 50 cents per square foot. That is an annual basis, which amounts to 43. No. Oh yeah, it's $13,000, about $13,000. At the end of the 30 years, we actually will own the building. So the lease is not set up to have extension in it. So some of our leases come forth and they have like, oh, they could request that, but this lease is done at 30 years, which time that hangar, this building will come back to us. And another condition of the lease is that they have to establish a capital reserve account. We have this on some other leases as well, but essentially what it is Beta will fund and set up, and then under a trustee account, they'll set up an independent capital reserve account that can be used if things come up and there's, I'm not talking about regular preventative maintenance, but larger material expenses that need to be incurred to be done on the building. They can know that they can draw out of that account as well. But that is there to sort of protect and make sure that there are adequate reserves should things seem.
And so today we're just asking for a ground lease agreement, a relatively simple ground lease agreement with Beta Technologies for what we have labeled Area 5.
Very much. Are there questions from the board? Councilor Carpenter.
I mean, it's pretty low price. What, in terms of future needs of the airport, I mean, I understand what thought process, why have this relatively low cost lease? I understand you've got the building, so that class, but that's 30 years of non-use by the airport. I'm just, high level version of, does this impede or could this impede what we might want?
Yeah, great question.
Letting it sit there, I mean, it could sit there for.
Yeah, really great question, and I should have included that. I will include that later. Specific to our master plan, our airport master plan. Again, back in 2019, we accomplished a 30-year master plan for the airport with both short, mid, and long-term really capital needs, but also design requirements and future use requirements, not just in this location, but everywhere. We studied this apron extensively. We built this apron a few decades ago. It's been vacant, so there's been no activity on this apron. But we built this space specifically to house various hangars. Beta has built one hangar already in a past lease agreement with us. This would be a second hangar on a space that was specifically designed to encourage and grow additional hangar space on that particular spot. We have no need. It's a very, very small spot in the grand scheme of things. It's about 25-ish thousand square feet total. About a third to a half an acre parcel of land. Very small, very, very condensed, and very difficult to do anything else except what Beta is proposing to do on this because of the proximity to roads and other hangars, that sorts of things. It also can't be located closer to the runway. We have very strict building restriction lines and codes and height requirements. So this is the extent of what can be used on that parcel.
Council Marlowe?
And thank you for spending time with me on Friday, explaining some of the particulars. I did the calculation, looks like you have like little over 6 acres available for aviation development. This is like 275, it's like less than 5% of what is available. So I know that you had expressed in or maybe Tim George had, the chair of the airport commission said that was one of the questions that they had for you in the commission, was whether or not there would be too much Beta concentration at the airport. And it doesn't appear that there will be. I did want to note for the public that this was approved by the airport commission unanimously last week. So that's something that we've been looking to them more and more to do, because the council has so many things under their purview. We definitely appreciate when the airport commission does the deep dives on these things. One of the questions I wanted to ask was the one that former Councilor Busher asked has this been controversial in any way in your discussions with South Burlington?
Yeah, no, like I said, this has gone already to the development review board, and I don't think a final determination has been submitted until a lease is actually approved. There's been no controversial discussions. This is not only a distance away from the public viewing locations, more or less Williston Code spaces. So you won't even be able to see this from any publicly accessible road. This space is designed specifically to match everything else and to match, of course, the zoning requirements in that space. I think generally, without, of course, speaking for South Burlington, has been positively received throughout that, specifically the DRB and staff conversations. So I would absolutely say this has not been controversial, and more on that, not controversial in the grand scheme of total airport conversations and adjacent tenants. Pratt & Whitney is the closest tenant that's adjacent to this space, and they've received this very well too, because while it won't impact them, it's obviously going to add traffic to our road, which is a private road that leads to this hangar. But very positive views, I would say.
And thank you. And my last question is around the length of the lease. I mean, it's a ground lease, so someone has to improve the property. That's right. Is 30 years typical in that type of lease?
Yeah, it is. And in full transparency, it was requested to be even longer than that. But during the negotiations, I did not feel comfortable for those very specific reasons. Essentially, the capital development and the capital funds that we're going to be put into it versus the amortization over that time period, in this case, the settled 30-year negotiated time. It is typical. We have had other leases that have had similar dollars invested into that property with about the same time frame, 30 years associated with that. And that's also with that 50 cents a square foot annually. That's, back to your question, Counselor, that's also a standard lease rate that all tenants receive at the airport, and not just those 1 through 5 parcels, but as we continue to lease to heritages and other entities located at the airport. So consistent with length, consistent with lease rate, I would say is absolutely the case.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
More or less, do you know the value of the hangar or the improvements that they plan there?
Right now, I believe they're around $4 million. But there are some things that are unknown right now, which are under the ground, that are gonna come into play as soon as we sign the lease and they start investigating you.
Mindful of what time it is and what we have ahead of us on the agenda. So are there any other burning questions or comments? Or the burning
Well,
question?
it's not a burning question, it's,
Okay.
it's just a very brief point, it's just a note of gratitude. Beta, particularly if they're on the brink of opening up this next big chapter in their development. I'm thrilled that they're continuing to think about investment here at Burlington at the airport, and grateful that they have a partner in you and your team. So thank you for this work, and if Beta is tuned in, a note of gratitude to them as well for continuing to stay with Burlington here as they continue to grow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting, and I'm eager to share more. Yep.
Counselor, a good point to end on and to pivot into if there's a motion. Take the time, I will even entertain the action indicated on City Clerk.
I can move for
All
that.
right, Counselor Carpenter,
I will move the action indicated on Senate Clerk.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Travers, thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, team.
Thank you all.
So without objection, I'm going to merge item 4.3 and 4.4 together because they are very similar items from our Department of Finance Administration regarding the authorization of two different bonds, two different authorization points of time in the city's history. And I'm going to pass it over to Catherine to help us get through these two items, item 4.3 and 4.4.
You, Mayor. Yes, the reason why these are two different items is, as the mayor noted, because the authorization for this bonding for the school district comes from two different points in time, two different voter approved votes. And so, but we're really looking to utilize $19 million that voters have already signed off on for the schools. 2 million of that is the regular amount every year by charter that the school is allowed to borrow. $14 million of that is for the high school. That comes from the November 2022 vote that authorized 165 million. And so that's 14 million of that. And then the last 3 million comes from a vote that was so long ago, people might have forgotten. It was March of 2017. And this $3 million is the last of that March 2017 money and will also be going to the high school. As astute watchers like Sharon Busher might recall, the city often does this bundling. We take the money only when we need it. We did not take $165 million at once because we did not need all of that at once. We take the money when we need it, but we bundle that. We try and borrow for the school, the electric department, and the city all at once because we get a cheaper rate and we save on transaction costs. And so that's what we're doing here. But we need two separate resolutions because one comes from the 2022 voter authorization and one from 2017. And I am happy to answer questions. I will note for the record that we have a maximum interest rate percentage that we are asking. We say we won't go above that. We asked for something similar a few weeks ago, and Sharon Busher and this board asked us to report back when we do the borrowing of what did we end up getting. And we will do that. We haven't taken the borrowing yet, but we will, and we will do the same thing for the school bonds.
Catherine, questions or comments from the board?
Just on the 2017 bond. I'm curious why we're doing that now, not use it all. And explain, refresh my memory on what that bond was.
We did not use it all, and I don't have those details. Those are usually managed by the school, but it looks like Counselor Barlow could be my phone a friend.
Yeah, I was actually on the school board in 2017. This bond was approved. It was, at the time, we had separated the question of high school bonding and bonding for all the other capital improvements around the district. And there was, I think, it's 39 minus, it was like 19 million maybe.
I think that's right.
That was identified for various projects, and it's been sort of fungible and it's been moved around based on need, but it's funded things like the most recently at IAA. So it's just what's left over from that capital.
And I think part of the issue is there is a time element. And so now that the work at the various schools has finished, I think the idea is to use up the 2017 authorization in its entirety, and then they may not, as we've always heard, they may not need all 165 million of the big bond, but to exhaust the small bond, and then they could keep going and just using as much of the big bond as they need.
I just a question, and you may or may not know this, but do you know how much of the big bond authorization, or how much we anticipate they'll remaining to be drawn down from that authorization? Or the school's mostly done, but I know it's not been in work continues, so.
I don't have a good handle on that, but I'm happy to find out.
It's more of a point of interest because
Yeah.
it'll sort of inform how much additional debt service will be coming.
Yeah.
Fiscal 27. And beyond.
Yeah, no, thank you. Anything else from the board?
So I guess just a question for perhaps you, CAO, John, first. And just follow up. My recollection is that when we signed off on the MOU with the school district prior to the bond measure being placed on the ballot, there was a commitment from the school district that at least 1 month prior to their seeking the authorization of any bond monies, that they would provide a written status report to the city of a construction project and the other commitments that had been made under the MOU. And I'm curious whether or not, I think we see the status report, right? It's going up right now on North Avenue. But I'm curious whether or not we have been receiving written reports along those lines. I'm happy to follow up with our council counterparts on the school board to perhaps around the same time last year, we had a joint meeting with them, and it may present a good opportunity here. But just curious whether or not those aspects of the MOU in terms of any sort of status report have been provided prior to seeking this bond authorization.
I have not received those status reports.
Okay. I'm still in favor of this, as mentioned. I think we see the good progress that's happening. I was just up there today, and it looks great. But there were other efforts that were considered as part of that MOU, including both the districts and the city's joint commitment to continuing to find ways to bring down the overall cost of meeting those bond monies. I would be curious at this stage as we sort of see an end in sight, albeit still a little ways off, getting an update as to where those efforts stand. So I'll follow up on that, but I'm very supportive of the measure this evening.
Thank you for flagging that, Councilor Travers. That's news to me, so that's good to know. And we do have quarterly meetings by office with the Burlington School District, and so we go between council and our updates we do as administration. We'll make sure we get that to everybody. Any final questions or comments before I look for a motion? Okay, is there a motion?
It's too low.
Yes, I agree, I'm for my board.
Well, 4.3, I'd recommend that the city council.
And Councilor Barlow, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Travers. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. And item 4.4.
I would recommend that the city council approve the attached resolution.
There's a second. Councilor Carpenter, thank you. Don't see any further discussion, so all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Everyone, moving right along to our next item, 4.5, which is with our community partners, Town Meeting TV. If you want to come on up for a fiscal year 25 update and a fiscal year 26 in our municipalities, fiscal year 27 budget. Thank you both for being here. Jordan, again, you want to introduce yourselves?
Yes,
Yeah, our moment, but welcome. We have about 10 minutes on the site.
Here's.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear you.
Oh, you can do an option.
Sorry.
We'll do the task.
My name is Megan O'Rourke. I work with CCTV. I'm Holly Mitchell. So I'll lead the presentation today. I'm very lucky to work with this organization. And I'll take it away.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having us. My name is Jordan Mitchell, Director of Operations for Town Meeting TV. And so exactly, we're here to request contributions as part of the city's FY27 budget, and this will give an overview of the last fiscal year. So this report is on packet page 143 to the Board of Finance on Town Meeting TV operations. So Megan is the Executive Director of CCTV, which is kind of a parent organization that houses a couple projects, Town Meeting TV, the cable access channel that you're most familiar with. CCTV Archives, our archival arm of the organization, and CCTV Productions, which is our service fee provider organization. Town Meeting TV serves not just Burlington, but also South Burlington, Essex Junction, Williston, and Colchester. Service and coverage is allocated based on cable subscriber numbers through what is referred to in your packet as a contract. Town Meeting TV provides gavel-to-gavel coverage of municipal meetings as well as community events. We also have media tools and assistance allowing your community members to create their own programming. And we also have media education as internships to members of the community. So in the past fiscal year, we produced 1,657 programs for all of our municipalities, and 351 of those programs was municipal coverage. So for Burlington, I'll kind of break it down into these 3 bullet points. So the contract with trustees stipulates coverage of 6 meetings a month, and at least 1 general program a month. In addition, there's a separate municipal contribution where Town Meeting TV provides hybrid support for the NPA meetings each month. So combining those 2, we produced 137 City Council, Board of Finance, PRB, and NPA meetings last fiscal year. And this is Chair Fletcher, I know had a question about seeing where some of those numbers are, and that's back at page 143. So page 144 on the top of that page kind of breaks down the numbers of meetings we covered. There is also a 3rd additional municipal contribution to CCTV Productions for additional meetings, which with that last year we covered 63 TUC, Police Commission, Public Works, and then executive and mayor conferences. Outside of the municipal meeting coverage, you might have seen us out around town, and we covered some events last year, such as the Church Street tree lighting, Earth Day, Burlington waterfront cleanup, Memorial Day remembrance, the AARP and City North Anti-Housing Forum. Mad Pride and the annual South End Art Hop. That's kind of just a scratch of the surface. And if you feel there are program areas that we're not covered in the community, you're welcome to reach out to us, whether that's to me or another way to do that is through the Burlington trustee. Kevin could be here tonight, but he's been at other finance meetings over the years, so I'm familiar with them. So talk about funding. Anything to add? You're good. All right. Town Meeting TV is funded in large part by cable subscribers of Comcast and Burlington Telecom. Those and then municipal contributions help to increase or help meet the increased demand for services decline in cable revenue. So this year we are requesting 3 contributions. The FY27 Burlington municipal contribution of $30,631, which is a 5% increase from last year for general Town Meeting TV operations. $30,000 to Town Meeting TV for ongoing production of hybrid meeting coverage of the NPAs. $44,100, which is a 5% increase to CCTV productions for the additional Burlington municipal meeting coverage. And those numbers are at the top of the page in our packet. Those were not clear. Talk a little bit more about revenue. CCTV continues to try to diversify our revenue sources. We recognize that cable revenue has been declining. It declined 9% in the last year. And so some other ways that we look to make that up is through fundraising, grant development, fee for service work, advocacy. For example, Town Meeting TV is a member of VAN, the Vermont Access Network, which is a coalition of the 23 public access centers across Vermont. Through VAN's advocacy, not past legislative session, but starting 2 sessions ago, we started to receive base funding through the Secretary of State's office. This past legislative session, that was $1.35 million to VAN, divided among all the access centers. We'll continue to work with the Secretary of State's office to increase that to $2 million by FY28. In addition, we continue to expand our service work across municipalities. Lastly, I have to thank our staff because they're here at these meetings. So coverage for Burlington is split between Steve, who's currently upstairs in Comtoys, and also Aubrey, one of our newer film producers you might have seen. Just thanking them for being here and their contribution to the piece. Megan, is there anything you want to add?
It's great. Just, and if there, again, part of this is not only a request or an ask, but a reminder that we're here to work with you. So if there are things that you want to see us do differently, improvements that you want to make, feedback that you want to share to that, and welcome. Sitting here, it's been kind of a consistent point of pain for me. I want a second camera in this room, so we have to see who's talking when they're talking, and that is actually something that probably work with you to install, and then since we have field producers already covering this, they can operate that camera. So similarly to the city council, so those are the kinds of improvements that we can work with.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a couple minutes for questions or comments from the board. Councilor Barlow?
And thank you, and it is an incredibly valuable service that we have. You'll be covering a lot of public meetings. I had a question. So I totaled up those. It's 104,700. So that's basically the ask for Burlington for this money. So, do you know how that compares to?
Yeah. So
we're doubling the increase on the NPAs.
yes. So that was
in large part, a lot of this thing. Yeah. So in large part, we have, when the city decided to start giving, we have done the MPAs for years as part of like our public access. We worked with volunteers, we trained volunteers recorded those meetings. In a lot of cases, we've had that happen where volunteers are recording meetings, police commission, and then it becomes something where the effort to continually train volunteers is out, becomes more onerous than sending a field producer. But then we have to consistently pay for that field producer. So we used to do this using our public access resource funds. training volunteers. Then we started sending field producers out to record these. The city offered to pay us, probably about 3 years ago, $15,000. At that time, it was about half the cost of what it takes to do those meetings. And we can no longer kind of use cable revenue funds to try to offset that work.
It's like 15,000.
Yeah, so we are asking other.
The other question I had was, right, do you have an idea of like viewership on these? Are there meetings that like we're doing it because we have been doing it, but nobody watches that, and those would be opportunities to either redeploy those resources to other meetings that might be more of more interest to the public, or to stop covering meetings to sort of manage the costs?
I think there's two ways to think about it, and certainly the city already has a policy of recording all meetings, at least when I talked to this TO, Scott Barker. The city has a policy where they record all meetings that are public bodies. So you're required at this point, under open meeting law, to record all meetings of public bodies. So those, I think it's a good idea in many cases to have those in your archives. You don't know when a meeting's going to be, become important. The conversations we record the airport meetings with the direct contract with the airport, for example. All of, asking them to take on more work where they're doing deliberations is, sort of say, oh, it was a good idea that we started recording those meetings again at the request of a member of the public. So viewership is the only count that we can do is YouTube. Where are people, that's, I would say fair to say, you can't get cables, cable companies don't tell us how many people are watching the actual cable channel. But we're happy to go through, either Catherine Chad or Scott Barker and look at what we're covering.
As more of a point of interest, to see if there was a way to prioritize.
Yeah. More often than not, once you start recording something, people don't want you to stop recording it.
Yeah.
And I think there are more meetings people want in the collective archive than not.
Or even with that, used to not record the tube regularly. It was 2 years ago that multiple people email, record the tube, we can't find the tube, so we started recording the tube.
Yeah. And it's actually an important part that we are sort of, we're a partner to you, but we work on behalf of the public. And so I think that's a case where, I think Councilor Travers and I have had a conversation about if you tell us to turn off the cameras, we're not gonna turn off the cameras, right? Because we're not here.
I didn't tell you to.
No, you didn't. No. Yeah, because we're here on behalf of it. We're here on behalf of the public, but also we're as part of the city.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Arlo. And mindful of time, I'm going to see if Councilor Newbies are going to have the last word on this, but this is an information only item for tonight. This is very early on in our budgeting process for 2027. I know it lines differently with your fiscal year. So we will have more time to discuss this, of course. Councilor Newbies?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for the presentation, and thank you for all of your work. The one piece that I have interest in is getting a better understanding of what committees, like where there are gaps, what committees we're not recording, city council committees, because I thought last time we discussed this a year ago, it might be that REIB isn't on CCTV, and I might be wrong about that, but I would have interest in figuring out if there are gaps in city meetings, even though we do record them as a city, sorry, I got kids in the background, what that would cost us to be able to do, and how realistic it is to expand.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I do recall last year mentioning that. So we only regularly cover the Board of Finance and the TUC. But for example, if the city records a meeting, they could also send it to us to air and archive, and that would be a lesser cost than having us in the room in person. So that's definitely something to consider as well.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I'm going to move us on, since this is again an information only item, Thank you both very much, Jordan and Megan, for being here, and we'll have more conversation.
Yeah, well, happy to come back if you need or have a sideline conversation.
Great.
Thanks, sorry. not to-
It's all recorded, so we have the clear. Next.
Some show's gonna be amazing.
So moving on to item 4.6, which is proposed changes to the Burlington Electric Department miscellaneous service fees. And we are on a little bit of a clock, so thank you for being our last item, and let's mindful again to the board that we're gonna, you all seem to be upstairs by.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the good news with this one is you all have already voted on this and approved it in the past. So we may not need maybe as much time as we would otherwise, but we're here to talk about our miscellaneous fee update. We started work on this back in 2023. We had an update that was approved by the Board of Finance and City Council, and in consultation with our Department of Public Service, they identified several items that would need change, and we had crossed fiscal years by that point. So we thought it would be prudent to go back, update the fees with the current fiscal year cost structure and bring them back through for a approval, which we have from our electric commission, and we're here tonight for Board of Finance. I did hear former Councilor Busher's questions, and I did want to confirm she was correct on the second one, that the fee in question that is going up is a fee where a Burlington Electric staff member is called to a residence, and the power problem is not on the electric company's side, but it's actually on the customer side. And we will, of course, try to talk through with the customer before sending somebody out if we think that the power problem might be on the customer side. But if the customer still insists that they want somebody to come and go to the property and it's not actually an issue with the electric service, that's where that fee comes in. So she was correct in her assumption there. And on the first one she mentioned, which is a new fee for disconnect, reconnect, it's in circumstances where we have to roll a truck multiple times to a customer residence to pull a meter, shut power, have work be done, and then reinstall and turn back on. And the whole idea behind the miscellaneous fees is these are fees that are discrete to a customer. It shouldn't be socialized within rates for all customers. So these are required to be essentially paid by a customer who's causing the cost, not by the broader rate base. So that's just the philosophy behind it. But most of these are documented very well in the memo, but Emily is the expert to answer any questions that you might have.
Emily, thank you for being here. Questions or comments from the board? Councilor Travers.
Will you confirm, Derek, to the extent you were indicating that we've approved this previously, what exactly are you referring to? I know that you've seen fees before, but this is a new fee structure for some items, is it not?
This, I think an exact list was brought to the board and the council for approval. The updates are really numbers. If Emily can elaborate.
Sure. The council approved these in June 2024. So the names and labels and categories of the fees are the same. The dollar amounts have changed in those cases.
But there are some new fees that are
Yes.
in here that were not previously approved in June 2024.
They
Is that
were
right? They were approved.
Yeah.
But they haven't been implemented.
Right.
They've not been implemented.
They've not been implemented because when we went to the Public Utility Commission process and consulted with the Department of Public Service, when they identified that we would need to change a few of them, we did not move forward. At that point, we withdrew and we're back here to get those updates in place before we implement.
Okay.
So you've never seen these on these changes implemented on customer fees, but we have had them approved previously.
All right. Well, if I did not raise this before, then apologies as well for not raising these questions in advance. One of the concerns that I would have, and I'll clarify this, is that, I know that a number of folks, as they would look to electrify their homes, whether get set up for an EV or switch over to pumps or what have you, have needed to work to increase the amps on the panel. So is that the kind of instance that would now be assessed fee of nearly $600? You're having to move out your 150 amp panel and put in a 200, 250. That's the kind of work that would potentially be assessed fee along these lines.
That is an example. It's not the only example, but it's an example where that would be required. So you're right that there's even though we have rebates for all these different measures and we support all these different measures with a number of different programs, there is a cost that the customer has not had to pay in the past. It's been socialized within rates. That now that customer doing that project, whether it was a solar installation or a panel upgrade, would have an additional cost to pay for that fee. Which, you know, all things equal, we would prefer not to do, but we also are conscious of the overall kind of rate burden and what should be in rates versus not in rates. And that particular service has been identified as discrete enough that the customer who's causing the truck to have to roll should pay for it, as opposed to, you know, if we were working on a power outage that serves 2,000 customers, that's very clearly something that goes in rates that's not assessed to any individual customer.
Anecdotally, at least, albeit from a number of constituents, you know, I have heard that Burlington, probably to its credit, is more exacting than some other municipalities around the state with respect to expectations as to how many amps should be on your panel if you're installing a heat pump system, that your inspectors perhaps expect more than some electricians' experiences in other municipalities. And I've heard frustrations, constituents who, you know, are adding up the anticipated capacity of the equipment they're installing, and they're comparing it to the what's amperage or voltage, I think it's amperage, right?
Amperage,
Yeah, amperage.
Yep.
On their existing panel, and they're saying, why do I have to install a 200 amp panel or a 250 amp panel? I already have 150. I'm adding all this up, and it's at 140, right? And it's the city that's telling me that I need to put in this new panel, and that already costs a lot of money in itself. As someone who had to install a 200 amp panel to be electrify our house, like it was a cost that almost stood in the way of our actually electrifying our home. So I guess the high level question here, right, is what concerns do you have that in standing up a new fee on top of the costs that are already associated with having to install higher end panels are going to slow down our net zero drive to electrify with pumps, charging stations for cars and such?
I do want to distinguish, because it's a good question. I've heard the same concern. So that would be a Department of Permitting and Inspections issue where they could have raised a concern in some instances, as I'm aware, as you just pointed out, where they might say, okay, if every device was on in a home all at once, you might be close to or at capacity for amperage. And I've heard where individuals or contractors have pushed back and said, well, no, this scenario is not possible or likely, and they've been able to do something at a kind of a lower amperage level and not had to upgrade by, you know, putting in a heat pump. I would also offer that if you hear of this in the future, there are devices that you can put around the circuit for a heat pump or for an EV that can essentially act as a shutoff for that device in the event that the panel would otherwise be overloaded, and is a far, far cheaper solution in a discrete case than upgrading the entire panel. So I agree with you that there can be issues within the kind of permitting and inspection process that could hinder somebody from being able to move forward. We've had good conversations with our colleagues at permitting and inspections around that. I think there's been some progress in some of the cases I'm familiar with, but I would distinguish from that from our kind of rates and fees, which were essentially required to charge the cost causer in utility practice and not to socialize if we can distinguish. And in this case, we can distinguish. So you're correct that of all the good things that we do to help support electrification, this would be one thing that might modestly move in the other direction. We're certainly open to other ideas for how to support customers with electric panel upgrades, because it's going to be part of our future. And there are no federal incentives anymore after the recent federal legislation. I don't believe there's any state programs either. So it's a good issue, but I recognize what you're sharing, and it's more a permitting and inspection issue.
I'm mindful of the time right now that we're already after this time. I will say out loud here, again, my regrets for not getting in touch with you earlier. This gives me some pause, right? And I am wondering, do we have any information on the extent to which Green Mountain Power and utilities in the state charge similar fees? We've been zero for this circumstance. We know whether customers in South Burlington, for example, are having to pay a fee similar to this, and
we do.
And like maybe, I mean, look, if the board votes it out, it votes it out. I don't know how essential it is that we vote it out this evening. I would perhaps be interested in our personally, taking just a little bit more time with this to understand fully the potential unintended consequences of slowing down the electrification efforts. But that's just me, and wanted to voice that out loud. Ultimately, I turned to the other board members here.
Well, Council Travers, let's see if they have an answer to whether off the top of their heads, and then we can sort of must be in our 90 seconds left.
We've done some research on that exact question. The other piece is not all these fees are going up, some are going down, and we've had at least one member of the public who is a property owner who is charged $30 every time they have to change over an account that now would be charged $5 under the new fees, and have been a vocal advocate at our commission for making these changes. And so our commission approved them, but they're also, they were looking for us to advance them expeditiously back to the PUC. But I appreciate your concern, and we certainly would want to address it as best as we can.
Vermont Electric Cooperative charges to $256 for a disco for disconnect if line crew is it, which is the comparison to what we built in because it's requiring a 2-hour trip by a line truck plus another vehicle. And then in addition, they separate reconnection also $256 if line crew. So that gets you to $500. If after hours, it's $679 for Vermont Electric. So he does not have fee for that, I don't think this time. This is, their tariff was last updated in 2019. So, and ours hasn't been updated since 2009.
It's true too that from 2009, I apologize, Mayor, I know we're at time. 2009 to 2017 timeframe, more people were moving away from electricity for heating and over to gas, and we actually had a program to support that. When I came to BEP in 2017, we reversed course on that very quickly to support electrification. So this is a relatively new phenomenon in the numbers that we're seeing who want to upgrade, which is probably why if they haven't upgraded their tariff since then, that they may not have a discrete fee. Vermont Electric updated theirs in 2024, so they've had that fee. And I do think if we went to the PUC without it, there might be issues where they might kind of argue that we should have it. So there's some push-pull in the process, but.
So I'm going to see if there is a motion of sorts that might be. And Councilor Niebuhr, I see your hand actually. Before I go to the motion, I'm going to go to Councilor Niebuhr very quickly here. Councilor Niebuhr?
Yeah, I apologize. I know we're at time, but I mean, my main interest, and I've been looking through more of these, and I also wish I had looked earlier. But I guess I'm open to delaying, assuming that it's not going to throw a huge wrench into the process, because I actually agree with the direction on some of the fees that my colleague is talking about, but I want to understand all of these a little bit better. And I also, with an eye toward sort of the folks who are making sort of the lower half on the income scale in our city and renters, how each one of these interact with that. And some of them off the top of my head here make some sense to me. And yeah, I think it's a good thing if there's 257 people going a 200 amp service, which isn't exactly what it's saying here, but for electrification, I would venture a bet that those are folks who can afford some of these fees, and that isn't the vast majority of folks who are renting in the city. So I would have interest in, I think, understanding these a little bit more.
Sounds like there might be a different motion. Councilor Barlow?
I had a clarifying question, because I'm still unclear about whether or not there is some wiggle room to delay. Wait, when do you have to go?
We were asked by our electric commission to try to get this to the PUC in the November or December timeframe. And there's some period of time where we'll need to go back to the Department of Public Service and discuss it with them. So I think we had this scheduled for this evening, and then we had it scheduled for council, if I'm remembering the date, November 3rd, if that's the next council meeting. I don't know if there's a Board of Finance that evening as
There
well.
is.
I don't know if you'd be amenable to our bringing it back to both bodies on the same date, if we can answer questions in the meantime, or.
I'm amenable to it being concurrent on November 3rd. I think the administration is open to that. I would, with appreciation for the discussion of this evening, move to postpone this item until the November 3rd Board of Finance meeting, understanding that this will be before the council this evening.
Our goal is always, why we tried not to concur, is to make sure that the rest of the council has time to also look in and fully vet and ask questions of staff over the, what is usually a 2-week break between Board of Finance and council. So I would ask for everyone's partnership to make sure your colleagues take the time these next 2 weeks so that we can indeed do a 1-2 kind of moment with concurrent items on Board of Finance and council. So with that, sounds like Councilor Travis is maybe making a motion.
Yeah, I move to postpone this item to the Board of Finance meeting.
Further, is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Barlow. Any further discussion on that before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor of postponement, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, no further business with Board of Finance. I adjourn the meeting at 6:09 p.m.